Hi, this is Faith and welcome to A Healthy Mix. If you are new to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe. This is a family-based channel, so I upload a lot of videos focusing on autism spectrum disorder and also some family vlogging videos. I have a 5-year-old son who is autistic and he loves to read kids' books out loud. So yes, I upload a lot of those books too every single week. So please go ahead and subscribe and let's get into today's video. So today's video is one that is very hard for me because I am going to be talking about my autism experience. Basically how we got our diagnosis and everything else that has to do with how we got to where we are now. Now I am in a place where I can openly talk about it and I'm comfortable enough to talk about it. However, that was not always the case. When Elliot was born, it was a normal pregnancy. I got pregnant with Elliot when I was in physical therapy school. And growing up, as a baby, he was pretty healthy. Never really got sick, never really had a cold or anything of that sort. Never really had ear infections or anything. He was a really good baby. He was a happy baby. And he never went to daycare. My mom stayed with me and she helped me take care of Elliot. When he was about to be 1, we had his 1-year doctor appointment. And at that visit, they gave you like a assessment, 1-year assessment, where you have to fill up all of the questions, like what is the kid doing, what is the kid not doing. After I got done filling up the questions, the pediatrician was in the room with me, and he was like, "Oh, is he saying mama?" I was like, "No." "Does he respond to his name?" I was like, "Sometimes he turns around and look at you." And for the life of me, I could not make the connection. Like, I learned about autism spectrum disorder in PT school, but when it came down to my son, I did not see it. Or like my sister would say, I just refused to see it. I did not want to see it. So he asked all of these questions, and then finally he was like, "You know what, I am gonna send you to the children's hospital for them to take a look at his ears just to make sure that he's able to hear." So I was like, okay, cool. We made the appointment. We went for the evaluation and everything came back normal. He was able to hear just fine. So the doctor's office called me back and I was like, well, let's just get him started in speech therapy. So we got that started with First Step. Is an early intervention program here in Missouri. So that was going on. He was doing really great in that. So he had speech therapy. And then after that, I was talking to the speech therapist and I was like, you know what? I think it would be really great for him to get play therapy, because I noticed that he does not play with a lot of his toys. And when he does play with his toys, he does not play with them appropriately. Like, he will spin the wheels, but he will not push the car. Or he will go outside with me for a walk and he would just stand by the road and just watch cars go by and get really excited and do this. So now that I'm looking back at it, I'm like, Faith, it was right there in front of you. It was right there before he was even 18 months old. It was there. However, he was my first kid. It was not what I wanted to see, so I did not see it. So the speech therapist was like, okay, we can do that. So she got in contact with the necessary people and we started play therapy too. And then my mom had to leave and my grandmother came from Liberia to help me with Elliot because I was a single mom. I decided it was time for me to put Elliot in daycare because I needed him to be a little bit more interactive with kids his age and to be around children his age just to see what he would do, because at that time speech was helping but he still was not talking. He was not saying mama. He was not really expressing himself and he still was not acknowledging people. Like, he would be sitting there and you would say something to him and he would not look at you, and he would be sitting there and you would tap his shoulder and it's almost like he does not even feel it. He just would be in his own little bubble and everybody else would be in their bubble. And that was it. So I went to the daycare. My sister recommended this daycare. I went there. I told the daycare provider, I was like, okay, this is the situation. He has never been in a daycare setting. This is going to be new for him. So his first day of daycare, 2 hours after I dropped him off, I called the daycare provider just to see how he was doing. And the first thing she said to me was, "Is Elliot autistic?" And I nearly lost it. Honestly, I wanted to tell this lady off. But because I was at work, I had to control myself. I was like, no, he does not have a diagnosis that said that he is autistic. It is his first time at daycare. He have never been in that setting before, so it is probably new to him. So that day after work, I went and I picked him up and he had cried the entire day. He cried so much he hated it. So one day he was at daycare, same daycare. I called the provider and I was like, how is he doing? She's like, you know, it's just a hard day for him today. So I was like, okay. And she was like, if you could pick him up early, that would be good. So I'm like, okay. My job was like 5 seconds away from the daycare. So I went and I picked him up and she gave me a letter. I was like, what's in this letter? And she goes, I don't think this is the right place for Elliot. I'm like, excuse me? She's like, yeah, I don't want him to come back. The services that he needs, we cannot provide it here. And I kid you not, I was so mad. I was so mad. Oh my gosh, I was so mad. I have never been that mad in my entire life before at someone. I was so mad because I blame myself for not listening to my motherly intuition that told me to take my son out of there. I was thinking to myself, I was like, I should have taken him out when I realized that he was crying every single day when I dropped him off, and I did not. And I was so mad at myself for not doing that. Because in the back of my mind, I was thinking, like, were they abusing him? Was he just being left alone to cry? It just did not make sense to me. Like, I was just on fire. So I took him home. I did a Google search and I visited 3 daycares. And out of all 3 of them, I met with one which was amazing. The teacher who class he was going to be in, she had a son who has special needs, because that was my first major requirement. I was like, I need a daycare that has the ability to handle kids that are not just like every other child, because I knew my son was different. However, at that time, I just didn't know how different he was. So that was my goal. I wanted a provider who would be able to handle that. So I finally found one, and she was awesome. She was hands down awesome. And it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. He loved it there. Now, fast forward a few months after he started this new daycare, he was going there 2 times a week. My grandmother passed. So Elliot still was not talking. He still was not answering to his name. He still was not acknowledging people. He was so loving though. Like, he would come and give me a hug. He would give me kisses and things like that. However, he would not do that with other people. So when my grandmother died, he shut down even more. After she died, more family came over. I saw my cousin. She had a son who was around the same age as Elliot, and he was talking. He was interacting with other children. He was interacting with other people. And I know people say you cannot compare kids. However, you can use them as an example. You know, and if yours is far off from that, maybe you should look into it a little bit more. So that was what I did. I saw that and I was like, okay. So I contacted the case manager for his early intervention, and I spoke to her. I was like, I think it might be time for us to increase speech therapy, increase play therapy, and hopefully we can add some other therapy too that might just be helpful. It's just a regular speech visit, and this was after I had my second kiddo. And just watching Elliot during that therapy session, it just hit me. And I was watching him. She just could not get him to focus on anything. And then I looked at her and I was like, do you think I should get him assessed for autism spectrum disorder? And she looked at me, she was like, if that's what you're thinking, that is a great idea. And I just sat there and I started to cry. I could not control myself. I started to cry and I was like, my family does not understand. I just told her, I was like, it is so hard to get African people to understand. And in their mindset, it is every child is different. Every child will develop on their own. He is your first child. He will probably be a little slower than other people's children because he is the firstborn. He's a boy. Boys are not as fast to talk as girls are. So just leave him alone, he will be fine. And that was the part that bothers me, was because I did not want to deal with that. I did not want to have to explain myself to people. And I just had to get to a place where I was like, you know what? It's not about people. It's about Elliot. And the first person that I had to do that with was with my mother. After I did that with her, I called the pediatrician and I told them what I was noticing and that I needed the referral to go to a specialist. I remember the day of Elliot's appointment. We went, it was a very long appointment, probably like 2.5 hours to 3 hours long. And the doctor, she first talked to me. We went over a lot of things like my pregnancy, my labor and delivery, his early developments, and then she spent time with Elliot. They did a lot of playing together. She asked him to point out stuff, identify things, just simple little questions that kids around his age would probably get right. And then after all of that, she gave us the diagnosis. He was mild to moderate autistic, and she recommended 20 to 40 hours of ABA therapy a week. After that visit, I cried. I spent a lot of time grieving. I grieved the son that I had in mind when I first got pregnant, when I first had him. And that for me was very, very necessary because I had to do that in order for me to be able to let that go, that idea that I had to let that go, so that way I can stop comparing my baby boy to other people's children and come to terms with who he was and who he is, and come to terms with all of the things that I would have to do in order for him to be his best self. After we got the diagnosis, I had to, of course, figure out a way how I was going to get ABA therapy. And I was hoping that with the diagnosis, my company would pay for ABA therapy. But unfortunately, I had to leave that job and find a new job with a company that was willing to pay for ABA therapy services. We have definitely come a long, long way. We have come a long way. But it took us a long time. It took us a lot of therapy visits. It took us a lot of me learning from other parents, me learning from teachers, me doing a lot of research, me becoming an ABA therapist myself. Now I did not get a license. However, I have spent a lot of time in ABA therapy myself. And we have come a long way. Don't get me wrong, every single day We still have our struggles. We still have tantrums that just comes from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds and you don't even know what it is that caused that problem. We still have those days. We had that day today. So yeah, but we have come a long way. So if you are feeling like, what are you gonna do? Trust me, you will be okay. You will do your best and your child will be okay. Your son or your daughter will be okay. If they are nonverbal now, that does not mean it's gonna always be that way. Every kid with autism is different, but one thing I have learned from interacting with a lot of moms who have kiddos that are on the spectrum is that they all say the same thing. At the end of the day, as long as you help your child with the services that they need and meet them where they're at, they will be okay. And you will too. So, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless you. Thank you.